My name is Alina, and I grew up in Denver, Colorado, in a house that felt less like a home and more like a small, tightly sealed world of its own. From the outside, people saw us as a model religious family. My father was the rabbi everyone respected, the man people went to for blessings, advice, and answers. My mother was the Aisha's Chael, the ideal religious woman with her wig just right, her skirt just right, her smile just right. We were the family on the posters, the ones people pointed to when they talked about good Jewish homes. Inside the house, it was very different. The first thing that shaped all of our lives was this belief that birth control was a sin. I heard that phrase before I even knew what it meant. My parents said every child, every pregnancy was a gift from God. And you don't say no to God, so my mother was pregnant almost all the time. I lost count after a while. Miscarriages, stillbirths, babies who lived, babies who didn't. By the time I was old enough to remember clearly, there were 8 of us running around a house that had space for maybe 3. We didn't have the money, the space, or the emotional stability for that many kids. But the community praised my parents as holy for having a big family, so the reality inside the walls didn't matter. My mother was exhausted, constantly overwhelmed, and it came out as rage. My father hid behind religion, behind his books, behind his reputation. As kids, we were taught that we were God's chosen people, that we were supposed to be a light unto the nations. At the same time, we were told the outside world hated us, that non-Jews wanted us destroyed, that even Jews who weren't as religious were dangerous. I remember being 5 years old and learning that we were hated, and also that we were better than everyone else. That's a strange thing to carry in a child's body, to feel both superior and unwanted at the same time. Religion wasn't something gentle in our house. It wasn't candles and songs and warmth. It was rules. It was fear. It was never-ending pressure. At 3, I already had morning rituals that terrified me. I wasn't allowed to walk more than a few steps before washing my hands from a special cup, because I was told that if I didn't, invisible forces would cling to me and something bad would happen. The water we used was said to be so impure that if we drank it by accident, demons would come for us. No one ever asked if a 3-year-old should hear things like that. It was just normal. Holidays weren't soft either. I remember Rosh Hashanah, standing in a line with other little girls while grown men waved live chickens around our heads to transfer our sins onto them. The girls in one group, the boys in another. Feathers, flapping wings, sharp claws scratching the air. We were scared the chickens would scratch us or soil us, and everyone laughed nervously, like this was fun. Then we watched them get slaughtered, blood everywhere, told it was holy, that this was what God wanted. I didn't know what sin was, but I knew what fear felt like. Then there were the clothes. From the time I could dress myself, my body was treated like something dangerous. Everything had to be covered. Elbows, knees, collarbones, each millimeter of skin had rules attached to it. In the summer, when Denver heat baked the sidewalks, I still had to wear thick stockings and long sleeves. I would roll my socks down secretly just to feel a bit of air, a bit of freedom on my skin. The guilt and fear that followed that tiny act were enormous. I was always waiting for lightning to hit me, for God to punish me for wanting to breathe. My mother policed my body constantly. If my skirt shifted when I sat down and a bit of my leg showed, it was a crisis. If I stretched and my sleeve slid back an inch, it was a crisis. I learned early that my body was a problem, that any male reaction to it, any gaze, any comment would be my fault. The first time I understood what immodest really meant in that house, I was maybe 7 or 8. We lived in a small duplex. Our family on the top floor, another religious family downstairs. Their teenage boys were always hanging around. There wasn't much to do, so we ended up downstairs a lot, playing in the laundry area, hiding in cupboards, running around the narrow hallway. It didn't feel safe, but there was nowhere else to go. And nobody was really watching us. One afternoon, something happened in that laundry room that I didn't have words for yet. I only remember confusion, the feeling of being trapped, and a kind of shame that landed in my stomach and never really left. An adult walked in, saw, screamed, and everything exploded. But not in the way you'd hope. No one said, "Are you okay?" No one said, "What happened to you?" The focus was on my body, my clothes, my immodesty. That night, I was yanked out of bed by my hair. I can still feel my feet dragging along a hallway floor. The sudden cold of being half awake. The sound of my mother's breathing as she pulled me. She threw me face down on the bed and started hitting me again and again, shouting that I was a disgrace, that I was uncovered, that I had brought shame on the family. It wasn't about what had been done to me downstairs. It was about the fact that I existed in a girl's body, and something had happened, so it must be my fault. I didn't understand the words. I understood the message. Your body is dangerous. You are dangerous. Everything that happens to you is because of you. My father didn't stop her. That was the pattern. When she snapped, when she dragged, slapped, or shot. I was 12 the first time I realized the world outside my home wasn't just different, it was forbidden. Stop by that age. I had learned to live two separate lives. At school, I was the quiet, obedient girl who recited prayers perfectly, kept her skirt at the correct length, and never questioned authority out loud. At home, I was a walking target, my mother's stress relief, my father's disappointment, my siblings' second caretaker. There was no version of me that was allowed to simply be a child, but adolescence complicates everything. Your body changes long before your mind knows what to do with it. And in my community, a girl developing early wasn't a natural stage of life, it was a threat. The summer I turned 12, I began to grow into the shape of a young woman. Nothing dramatic, just normal puberty. But in a world where every inch of a girl's body is watched, measured, regulated, even that was dangerous. My mother noticed before I did. She tightened my clothes. She added new rules. She made me wear undershirts beneath undershirts, stockings beneath stockings, layers upon layers until I felt trapped under my own skin. You're making men sin by growing. She said once. Growing. As if it were a choice. As if my body waking up was an act of rebellion. School became worse. Teachers watched us constantly. A wrinkle in a stocking could mean detention. A button undone could mean humiliation. Girls were regularly made to stand in the hallway with their arms raised while teachers checked the way our shirts fell, the way our skirts hung, the way our bodies might tempt someone. One day a teacher pulled me aside and whispered, "You're developing. Be careful. Don't be like the others." Like the others. Meaning, don't be seen, don't be noticeable, don't exist too loudly. I learned to fold into myself. I learned to walk small. To speak small. To breathe small. At home. Everything was becoming more volatile. My mother's pregnancies were back to back. The house was full of screaming toddlers, crying babies, piles of laundry, and endless chaos. The more overwhelmed she became, the more she lashed out. Her anger was law. Her exhaustion was sacred. Her violence was discipline. On the nights she snapped, I could feel it coming in the air, quiet, static, charged. We learned to hide. We learned to stay out of her line of vision. We learned that even a misplaced sock could trigger a storm. My father didn't intervene. He rarely raised his voice, but when he did, it was worse than her shouting. His disappointment was a different kind of violence, a calm, chilling rejection that told me I was unworthy before I even knew what the word meant. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was 13, sitting in class during a heat wave. Denver summers can be brutal, and our classroom had no air conditioning. Sweat dripped down the back of my neck, and without thinking, I pushed my sleeve up slightly less than an inch, just trying to cool off. The teacher saw it. She stopped the lesson. She called me to the front of the room. In front of 20 girls. She said, "Look at her. Look how she tempts men. Look how she brings shame." I felt my face burn. The room warped. My ears rang. Tempts men? I was 13. That afternoon when I got home, my mother already knew. Word traveled fast in religious communities, faster than truth ever could. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't let me explain. She took me into the bedroom, shut the door, and slapped me across the face so hard I saw white. Her words were sharper than the slap. "You're dirty. You're bringing sin into this house." Dirty. Sin. Shame. Those became the pillars of my adolescence, but something strange happened after that. Incident, something my mother never intended. The shame didn't make me obedient. It made me angry. Not loud anger, quiet anger, the kind that simmers instead of explodes. The kind that waits. I began paying closer attention. I noticed how the rules only applied to the girls. I noticed how the boys could run, laugh, explore, exist freely. I noticed how men's desires were treated as unchangeable truths, while girls' bodies were treated as traps. I noticed the hypocrisy. I noticed the holes. I noticed the lies. One afternoon, I sat in my room and whispered to myself, "This can't be what God wants." It felt like a dangerous thought, a sinful thought, a liberating thought. By 14, I was beginning to dream of another life. I didn't know what it looked like yet. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know how I would get there, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity: I could not. By the time I turned 15, I had mastered the art of disappearing. Not physically, my parents always needed an extra pair of hands, so disappearing from the house was impossible. But emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I was slipping away from them, quietly, secretly, carefully. The first crack in my obedience came from a place no one expected. The public library. Libraries weren't forbidden outright, but they were policed. We were only allowed to check out religious books, and even then, only ones approved by my teachers. But one afternoon, during a rare moment alone, I wandered into a section I wasn't supposed to be in. The worldly books section. Books with real stories, real women. Real lives. I remember picking up a novel about a girl who ran away from a strict home and rebuilt her life from nothing. I held it like it was contraband. In a way, it was. I read the first 2 pages standing up, then 3 more, then 10. For the first time in my life, I saw a version of myself on paper, someone questioning everything she was told to believe. I checked the book out under a fake name. It was the first lie I ever told to gain freedom. Once you taste freedom, even in tiny drops, the thirst becomes unbearable. The lies multiplied, but they weren't malicious. They were survival. I'm studying with a friend. I have to help my teacher clean her classroom. I'm attending an extra prayer session. In reality, I was discovering the outside world. Piece by piece. My first taste of music that wasn't religious. My first pair of jeans borrowed from a girl at the library. The truth was that I was living 2 lives, and the gap between them was widening so fast I couldn't keep up. In my religious world, I was the dutiful daughter. In my secret world, I was a girl learning who she might become. The turning point, the moment these 2 worlds collided, came unexpectedly. It was late autumn, the air sharp and cold. I was walking home from the library when I saw a group of kids from the local public school hanging out near the bus stop. They were laughing, teasing each other, living effortlessly. One girl, Sasha, called out to me, "Hey, aren't you from the Orthodox school? What's your name?" I froze. We weren't supposed to talk to outsiders. They were considered dangerous, corrupting influences. But something in her tone wasn't mocking, it was curious, human. "Alina," I whispered. She smiled. "Pretty name. You should come sit with us." Her invitation cracked something open in me. No one had ever invited me anywhere simply because they wanted my company. Sat down, I talked, I listened. They weren't monsters, they weren't corrupt. They were normal. And for the first time, I felt normal too, but nothing stays secret forever. A week later, my father confronted me. He'd heard things. Rumors. Whispers. Sightings. Double quotes. "You are not to speak to secular children," he said. "They poison the mind." I wanted to scream. My mind is already poisoned by your fear, but I swallowed the words, like I always did. His punishment came in the form of restriction. No library. No errands alone. No after-school anything. The walls of my cage closed in tighter than ever. But here's the thing about cages. Once you've seen the sky, even bars can't make you forget its color. I began sneaking out at dawn. I wrote in journals, hidden behind loose floorboards. I read books under the blanket with a flashlight. I memorized street names and bus routes because the idea of escape became a quiet obsession. I didn't know when I'd leave. I didn't know how, but I knew with absolute certainty if I stayed, I would suffocate. By the time I turned 15, I had mastered the art of disappearing. Not physically, my parents always needed an extra pair of hands, so disappearing from the house was impossible. But emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I was slipping away from them, quietly, secretly, carefully. The first crack in my obedience came from a place no one expected. The public library. Libraries weren't forbidden outright, but they were policed. We were only allowed to check out religious books, and even then, only ones approved by my teachers. But one afternoon, during a rare moment alone, I wandered into a section I wasn't supposed to be in. The worldly books section. Books with real stories, real women. Real lives. I remember picking Up a novel about a girl who ran away from a strict home and rebuilt her life from nothing. I held it like it was contraband. In a way, it was. I read the first 2 pages standing up, then 3 more, then 10. For the first time in my life, I saw a version of myself on paper, someone questioning everything she was told to believe. I checked the book out under a fake name. It was the first lie I ever told to gain freedom. Once you taste freedom, even in tiny drops, the thirst becomes unbearable. The lies multiplied, but they weren't malicious. They were survival. I'm studying with a friend. I have to help my teacher clean her classroom. I'm attending an extra prayer session. In reality, I was discovering the outside world. Piece by piece. My first taste of music that wasn't religious. My first pair of jeans borrowed from a girl at the library. My first time walking outside without being wrapped in layers. I felt guilt every time, and exhilaration. And fear. Asterisk. And hunger for more. But every act of rebellion came with consequences. One evening, I came home 5 minutes late. Just 5 minutes. My mother stood by the door, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She didn't scream. She didn't have to. Silence was her weapon. Where were you? Why are you flushed? Who were you with? I kept repeating, I was studying, but she didn't believe me. She rarely did. She searched my room that night, tore apart my drawers, threw my books onto the floor. She didn't find the contraband novel. I'd hidden it inside a pillowcase, but she found a pair of rolled-down sleeves, and that was enough. She slapped me across the mouth so hard I tasted blood. You are slipping, she said. I can feel it. Don't shame me. Don't shame this family. Shamed her favorite leash. At school, it wasn't much different. The teachers watched me the way hawks watch a rabbit. One teacher began giving me extra assignments. Really, they were interrogations in disguise. Have you been talking to secular people? Has anyone tried to influence you? Are you feeling rebellious? Rebellious. As if it were a disease. The truth was that I was living 2 lives, and the gap between them was widening so fast I couldn't keep up. In my religious world, I was the dutiful daughter. In my secret world, I was a girl learning who she might become. The turning point? The moment these 2 worlds collided came unexpectedly. It was late autumn, the air sharp and cold. I was walking home from the library when I saw a group of kids from the local public school hanging out near the bus stop. They were laughing, teasing each other, living effortlessly. One girl, Sasha, called out to me, Hey, aren't you from the Orthodox school? I wish I could say that once I decided to leave, everything got better. It did in single quotes T. It got worse before it got clearer. Leaving a religious community isn't one big door you walk through. It's 100 small doors, half open, half locked, with people screaming at you from both sides. My parents realized they were losing control of me. So they did what many families in our world do when a girl starts thinking for herself. They fast-tracked me into marriage. He's a good boy. He comes from a good family. He'll keep you on the right path. They said all the same phrases their parents had said to them. As if repetition made it true, he wasn't a monster. That might be easier to explain. He was a believer. In rules. In hierarchy. In the idea that a wife is a plane. He was a believer. In rules. In hierarchy. In rules. In hierarchy. In the idea that a wife is a hierarchy. That a wife is attached. He was a plane. He was a believer. In rules. Believer. In rules. In rules. In hierarchy. In hierarchy. Reflection of a man's honor on our wedding day. Everyone smiled like this was a victory. Like they had pulled me back from the edge of the secular cliff. Inside, I felt like I was walking into a new kind of prison. The first year of marriage was an education in invisible chains. What I wore was negotiated. Where I went was monitored. Who I spoke to was questioned. How long I stayed out had to be justified. If I laughed too loudly, I was drawing attention. If I spoke my mind, I was disrespectful. If I cried, I was ungrateful. He never hit me the way my mother had, but control doesn't always need fists. It just needs fear. The turning point came when I got pregnant. In our community, pregnancy is seen as the ultimate validation. You're no longer just a wife. You're a vessel fulfilling your purpose. People congratulated him more than they congratulated me. My body stopped belonging to me. Everyone had an opinion, what I should eat, how I should walk, what blessings I should say, which rabbis I should get advice from, what kind of birth I should have. I remember standing in the bathroom one night, 8 months pregnant, looking at my reflection, my hair covered, my clothes shapeless, my eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. I didn't recognize myself. Wasn't the rebellious teenager sneaking out of the house anymore. I wasn't the loud-mouthed girl in class asking difficult questions. I was a woman who had survived too much to still be this controlled. When my daughter was born, something ancient and wild woke up inside me. The first time they put her in my arms, the room disappeared. The rules, the elders, the expectations, all of it faded under the weight of one simple truth. I was responsible for a new life, and I refused to let her grow up the way I did. The lioness everyone talks about? She arrived that day. At first, I tried to make it work from the inside. I asked my husband for small things. Can we move somewhere less strict? Can she go to a school with a little more flexibility? Can we let her wear colors that aren't just black, navy, and gray? Every request was treated as rebellion, every suggestion as disrespect. He'd say things like, "You're confused. You're emotional. You're being influenced